Hello, friends. I am going to read one of my very favorite chapter books. It's called Little Witch by Anne Elizabeth Bennett. And the reason why I love this book so much is because it's about friendship and bravery. And it has lots of twists and turns that I hope you will enjoy as we read along. And with that being said, let's get started on Chapter 1, The Black Spell Brew. The ugliest, most rickety house in town belonged to an old witch, Madame Snickesnee. It stood on the very edge of town, a small, melancholy house with steps that are so old that one was in danger of falling through them. But Madame Snickesnee was too busy working her black magic and riding around on her broomstick to do anything about it, even if she had wanted to. She had a daughter, however, who hated the house and looked with longing at the gay, neat houses of the town. Her name was Minnikin, Minx for short. She was 9 years old, and she wished with all of her heart she were not a witch's child. This evening, Madame Snickesnee was preparing, as usual, for her nightly jaunt on her broomstick to see what trouble she could stir up. "Don't you want to come along with me tonight?" she asked in her harsh crow voice. "You haven't been out riding in a week." "No, I don't," said Minx. "I don't like riding around in the dark and cold." "You disobedient girl!" she shrieked at the old witch. "You're no child of mine. You'll have to start changing your ways pretty soon, or else you won't grow up to be a decent witch." She glared at Minx with her little red eyes, clamping her tall pointed hat on her scroungy hair. "Well, as long as you're feeling high and mighty," she went on, "you can just get to work on and cook up a pot of that black spell brew. And if you don't, you won't get any dinner tomorrow." Minx watched with relief as the witch sailed out the open door and up into the dark sky. After a while, the girl went over to a cracked mirror and leaned her arms on the ancient bureau beneath it, gazing at her reflection intently. She saw a thin, delicate face, a wide, soft mouth, and big eyes as dark as ripe blueberries. She had a dimple in her chin, which she did not like, wishing it had been in her cheeks instead. But even magic could not change that now. Rummaging through the drawer of the bureau, she found a somewhat toothless comb and ran it through her black hair, smoothing it at her shoulders. Then suddenly she gave a little jump and a gasp, turning around swiftly. "Oh, I know I saw her. I know I did," she said aloud to the empty room. "That happens so many times when I'm looking in the mirror." She stared eagerly into the mirror again. "I'll be looking at the mirror just like this, and then all of a sudden I think I see a lady, the most beautiful lady in the world, looking over my shoulder, but I'm never quick enough to see her for sure." She sighed. "Well, I've got to go cook up that black spell brew." She took down a magic pot from the shelf and placed it on the stove. It was an old-fashioned stove that needed to be fed wood to cook anything. She got the blaze started and then went to fetch a jar of magic powder to make the brew. "Oh dear, I wish I didn't have to be doing this," she said. "The witch must be going to enchant some more children, as if we don't have enough here in the house." She went over to the wide window-sill on which stood 7 flower pots. Each pot grew a different kind of flower. These, however, were no ordinary flowers. They were the children of the town who had been enchanted into flowers and pots. because they had been rude to Madame Snickesney. Minx took great care to keep them watered and in good condition. She wished could discover the magic formula to change them back into children. "You poor things," she said to the flowers. "I hope you don't feel unhappy. I wish I could help you. I wish you were all children again, and then maybe you would play with me." The flowers seemed to stir a little, and Minx was sure they understood. She was so lonely for children to play with because all of the children in the town were afraid of the witch's daughter. Suddenly her face brightened. "I'm not going to make that horrible brew yet. I'm going to work on my experiment." She looked over all of the jars of magic powders and liquids on the shelf. There were hundreds of them, and all different colors. Almost every night when Madame Snickesney went out, Minx worked on her experiment, trying different powders each time. She was trying to make the right kind of magic to cause a fairy to appear. She had never seen a fairy, and she was very eager to have such a delightful experience. So far, nothing happened except once a lot of toads started hopping out of the kettle, and another time when some large balloons floated into the room. Every time she tried her experiment, she felt rather nervous because she didn't know what might come of it. The witch's big black cat, Scorcher, came into the room and rubbed against her legs. He had very wicked yellow eyes, and Minx felt as if he knew what she was up to. "Go away, Scorcher. That's a good cat," she said, although she added privately to herself, he certainly was not a good cat. He scratched and bit and made himself a pig over songbirds. In a little while she had her magic liquid bubbling merrily in the pot. It was a delightful pink color, and Minx was almost sure it was the right mixture this time. The room became filled with the vapor, and pretty soon a shape began to form above the stove. Minx could feel her heart humming against her chest, and she squeezed her hands together anxiously. What would it be this time? Could it be a fairy? First appeared a funny pointed face with big ears and slanted eyes. Then a child's body down to the waist, and then, for goodness sakes, the rest was the shape of a colt. Half boy and half horse he was, and he leaped swiftly out of the kettle, landing with a clatter on the floor. "What are you?" asked Minx uneasily. "I'm a centaur, of course, stupid," he said. "Half boy, half horse. That's me." Sorcerer's back was raised, his fur stood on end. Scorcher's back was arched, his fur stood on end, and he was spitting furiously. "Be quiet, you fiend," said the little centaur. Scorcher leaped at him, claws outstretched, but the centaur thumped him firmly on the head with his hoof, and Scorcher lay stunned for a few minutes. I can't stand cats with such a sour disposition," said the centaur. "Now please tell me, miss, why have you conjured me up?" "Conjured?" repeated Minx blankly. "That means to call forth by magic, stupid," said the centaur. "And you'd better make your request pretty snappy, because soon I'll be fading back off into mythicalia." "Oh, I don't have any requests," stammered Minx. "I was just trying out an experiment." "Oh, you were," said the centaur snarily. "And I had to make this trip for nothing?" "I was just trying to make a fairy appear," explained Minx humbly. "A fairy!" hooted the centaur, throwing his head back and laughing wildly. "Ha ha ha! Why in the name of Pan would anyone ever waste their time on those silly little pests? Pains in the neck they are. And when you think of all of the disgusting stuff which has been written about them, tons of it. Oh, my oats and hay. You're wasting your time, sweetheart. Minx glared at him indignantly. Well, I don't care what you think. You're just jealous, you nasty old centaur. The centaur leaped at her, and she drew back in fright. Have a care, he said, lifting a threatening hoof. Remember what happened to your old cat. And see that you don't go conjuring me up again. His voice became fainter, and he began to grow misty around the edges. With a thankful heart, Minx watched him disappear altogether. Quickly she washed out the magic pot and put it back on the shelf. She knew that if she did not make the black spell brew, her mother would be horribly angry, but she was very tired and wanted to go to bed. She went over to a ragged blanket that was spread out on the floor and laid down. I wish I wish I could see a fairy, she thought drowsily. I wish I had some children to play with. I wish I knew who the lady in the mirror. I wish I could change the flower pots back to children. Oh, I wish I wasn't a witch's child. Then she took her wishes with her into sleep. And that's the end of chapter 1. We'll see what happens next time in chapter 2.